The clock ticked past midnight. Silence pressed in on Rahul. He sat alone in his dimly lit room, a shiver running down his spine. The phone on his bedside table buzzed, breaking the silence. He picked it up, his heart pounding. A raspy voice echoed from the receiver. It sent chills down his spine. "Rahul, help me." The voice was unmistakable. It was his grandfather, dead for 5 years. Rahul's breath hitched. "Grandpa, is that really you?" The line crackled with static. The voice whispered again, weaker this time. "The house, the curse, must break." Before Rahul could respond, the line went dead. He stared at the phone, his mind reeling. His grandfather's words echoed in his ears. Rahul knew what he had to do. He had to go to his grandfather's old house. The house everyone said was haunted. Rahul felt a strange pull towards the house. It was as if his grandfather's spirit was calling him. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he had to face his fear. He had to uncover the truth. The truth behind the phone call, the curse, and his grandfather's plea for help. The house loomed before him, a skeletal silhouette against the setting sun. It was a monstrous structure, a Victorian mansion with crumbling stone walls and a rusted wrought-iron fence. Vines, thick and gnarled like skeletal fingers, clawed their way up the walls, partially obscuring the faded grandeur of the house. Rahul shivered, a cold wind whipping through the overgrown yard, whistling like a mournful spirit. His breath formed small clouds in the air as he stepped through a break in the fence. The iron bit into his palm, drawing blood. He barely noticed. The house held an almost hypnotic power over him, drawing him closer despite the fear that clawed at his throat. He remembered visiting as a child. The house had been alive then, filled with warmth and laughter. Now it was an empty shell, a graveyard of memories. The windows, like vacant eyes, stared back at him. They seemed to watch his every move, judging, waiting. Rahul brought his two closest friends, Priya and Vikram. Priya, the ever-pragmatic one, scoffed at the mention of a curse. Vikram, despite his bravado, clutched a silver pendant, his knuckles white. They piled into Rahul's car, the old vehicle groaning under the weight of their apprehension. The drive was tense. Rahul recounted the phone call, his voice hushed, as if afraid the house itself might hear. Priya listened with a skeptical frown, while Vikram kept glancing nervously at the rear-view mirror. The closer they got to the house, the heavier the atmosphere grew. As they finally pulled up the long, winding driveway, a murder of crows erupted from the nearby woods, cawing harshly. Priya dismissed it as a coincidence, but Rahul felt a chill run down his spine. The house was waiting, his grandfather was waiting, and Rahul had a terrible feeling that he was walking into a nightmare. The front door creaked open with a groan, as if protesting after years of silence. The air inside was stale and heavy, thick with dust and the scent of decay. Sunbeams filtering through cracks in the boarded-up windows illuminated motes of dust dancing in the stillness. The house felt like a tomb, a mausoleum of forgotten memories and lingering sadness. Rahul, Priya and Vikram stepped cautiously inside, their footsteps echoing in the vast, empty hall. A grandfather clock stood at the far end, its pendulum frozen in time. Cobwebs draped the ornate furniture like ghostly shrouds. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the sound of their own breathing and the occasional creak or groan of the settling house. Then they heard it, a whisper, faint and indistinct, seeming to come from the very walls themselves. Priya dismissed it as the wind, but Rahul and Vikram exchanged uneasy glances. The house was awake now, and it had something to say. Section 5. The Lady in the Portrait. They continued their exploration, each room a mirror reflecting a bygone era. They discovered a dusty old nursery, its rocking horse frozen mid-gallop, and a grand dining room with a table set for a feast that never came. But it was the portrait gallery that chilled them to the bone. Dozens of portraits lined the walls, each face staring out with an unnerving intensity. It was like being watched by a jury of ghosts. And then Rahul saw her, the woman in the portrait. She was beautiful, with flowing raven hair and piercing blue eyes, but her beauty was marred by a look of profound sadness, of haunting despair. "Who is she?" Vikram whispered, his voice barely audible. Rahul didn't know, but he felt an inexplicable connection to the woman in the portrait. Her eyes seemed to follow him, pleading for something he couldn't understand. Section 6. The Diary's Secret. In the attic, they found a dusty old diary hidden beneath a floorboard. Its pages were brittle with age, the ink faded but still legible. As Rahul began to read aloud, his voice trembling, the diary revealed a tragic tale. It belonged to the woman in the portrait, Amelia. Amelia had been madly in love with a young man, but their families were rivals. Their love was forbidden. Driven to despair, Amelia made a pact with a dark entity, sacrificing her soul in exchange for a love that could never be. But the ritual went wrong, unleashing a curse upon the house and trapping Amelia's soul within its walls. The diary ended abruptly, leaving the mystery of the curse and Amelia's fate unanswered. Rahul felt a surge of sympathy for Amelia. She was not a malevolent spirit, but a prisoner of her own desperate choices. He knew he had to help her. He had to break the curse. The house seemed to press in around them, the temperature plummeting as a cold wind howled through the halls. The doors slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic welled up in Rahul's chest as he rattled the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. They were trapped. Priya, her face pale but composed, scanned the room for an escape route. Vikram, his bravado gone, sank to the floor, clutching his silver pendant. The whispers grew louder, swirling around them like a vortex of despair. They were not alone. Amelia was there, her presence palpable in the icy air and the growing sense of dread. The house was closing in, its darkness threatening to consume them. Rahul knew they had to act fast. They had to find a way to break the curse before it was too late, before Amelia's despair dragged them down with her. Rahul, his heart pounding against his ribs, remembered the diary. It mentioned a mantra, a way to break the curse. Desperately he flipped through the brittle pages, his fingers tracing the faded ink. The air grew colder, the whispers louder, as if the house itself was fighting against them. Priya, ever resourceful, noticed strange symbols etched into the fireplace mantel. They matched the symbols in the diary. They were running out of time. The temperature plummeted, the air thick with a suffocating sense of despair. Amelia's sorrow was a tangible force, threatening to crush them. The mantra, written in a language lost to time, seemed to burn itself into Rahul's mind. He had to do this. He had to free Amelia from her prison of despair. He had to break the curse that held them all captive. Taking a deep breath, Rahul began to chant the mantra. The words felt strange on his tongue, ancient and powerful. The room pulsed with energy, the air crackling with an unseen force. Priya and Vikram watched in awe as the symbols on the mantel began to glow, casting eerie shadows against the walls. Suddenly a cold wind whipped through the room, extinguishing their only source of light. A luminous figure coalesced in the darkness, its form shifting and swirling like smoke. It was Amelia, her spectral form shimmering with a cold, ethereal light. Her eyes, filled with an eternity of sadness, fixed on Rahul. The house seemed to hold its breath, the whispers fading into an unnerving silence. This was it, the moment of truth. Rahul's voice resonated with newfound strength as he continued the chant, pouring every ounce of his will into each syllable. The air crackled with energy as Rahul finished the chant. A blinding flash of light filled the room, followed by an eerie silence. The spectral figure of Amelia flickered, her form becoming translucent, then fading completely. The symbols on the mantel dimmed, their glow extinguished. The front door creaked open, as if compelled by an unseen force. A hesitant ray of dawn pierced through the gloom, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the still air. They were free. Rahul, Priya and Vikram stumbled out of the house, blinking in the harsh sunlight. The house loomed behind them, silent and imposing. As they drove away, Rahul couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. Had they truly broken the curse, or merely appeased it for now? He glanced back at the house, its windows like vacant eyes, watching them leave. He couldn't be sure, but one thing was certain: the house and Amelia's story would stay with him forever.